Dr. Velok wiped the sweat from his blue-scale forehead and stared at the scanner readings for the third time. The numbers had to be wrong. Nothing this big could be buried so deep under the ground. He called over his assistant, Crix, who was busy cataloging pottery shard from the morning dig. "Look at this," Velok said, pointing at the screen. "The scanner says there's a metal object down there. It's huge." Crix bent over the scanner and his 4 eyes widened. The reading showed something massive buried 2 kilometers below the surface. The object was over 5 kilometers long and nearly 2 kilometers wide. Whatever it was made of materials their scanners couldn't identify. "Professor, this can't be right," Crix said. "Nothing that big could be buried here. This planet has been dead for millions of years." Velok had been digging on Kepler 442c for 3 months. The planet was supposed to be empty, just another dead rock floating in space. But the soil samples had shown traces of ancient civilization. That's why the Zephyrian Science Council had sent his team here. They were looking for pottery, maybe some old buildings. "Not this. Run the deep scan again," Velok ordered. "Check the equipment." 20 minutes later, they had the same results. Something enormous was buried beneath their feet. The metal was unlike anything in their databases. Even stranger, the scanner showed energy readings coming from inside the object. After all these years buried in the ground, whatever was down there was still powered. Velok made a decision that would change galactic history. "We're going to dig it up." The excavation took 2 weeks. Velok had called for heavy drilling equipment from the orbital station. The work was slow and dangerous. As they dug deeper, the energy readings grew stronger. The closer they got to the object, the more excited Velok became. This was a discovery of a lifetime. When the drill finally broke through, it hit something incredibly hard. The drill bit, designed to cut through solid rock, barely scratched the surface. Velok ordered his team to clear away the debris by hand. What they found underneath made them all step back in shock. The surface was dark gray metal, perfectly smooth despite being buried for centuries. Strange symbols were carved into the hull, symbols that looked familiar but ancient. Crix was the first to recognize them. "Professor," he whispered, "these are human markings." Velok felt his blood run cold. Humans were extinct. Everyone knew that. Their planet had been destroyed centuries ago. There were no humans left in the galaxy. Yet here was proof that they had once visited this remote world. The team worked carefully to expose more of the hull. The ship, because that's clearly what it was beyond massive. It dwarfed anything the current galactic civilizations had ever built. The hull was covered in weapon ports, sensor arrays, and docking bays. This wasn't just a ship. It was a fortress that could fly through space. As they cleared more debris, they found letters painted on the side in the ancient human language. UNS Leviathan. Below that, more human words that their translators identified as Terran Defense Fleet. "This is impossible," Velok muttered. "The humans never had ships this large. Our history books say their biggest vessels were tiny compared to our current fleet. But the evidence was right in front of them. The human ship was enormous, advanced, and somehow still generating power after centuries underground. Velok realized they needed to get inside to learn more. They found an airlock near what appeared to be the ship's midsection. The door was sealed, but their cutting tools managed to create a small opening. Velok was the first to step inside. The corridor beyond was dark but clean. Emergency lighting flickered on as they walked, triggered by their movement. The walls were lined with human text and symbols. Everything was built for creatures much taller than the Zephyrians. As the archaeological team moved deeper into the ship, none of them noticed the subtle changes happening around them. Sensors that had been dark for 800 years began to glow softly. Deep in the ship's core, massive computers started running system checks. The ship's artificial brain was waking up. In the deepest part of the vessel, where 12,000 humans lay sleeping in crystal pods, a single light began to blink. The revival process for the command staff had begun. Captain Jake Morrison, who had been dreaming of Earth for over 8 centuries, was about to wake up to a galaxy that thought his entire species was dead. The Leviathan was rising from its grave, and nothing would ever be the same. Captain Jake Morrison felt the cold leaving his body as warm air filled his lungs. The cryogenic pod hissed open, and he sat up slowly, his muscles stiff from centuries of sleep. The revival process always made him feel sick, but this time was different. The ship's computer had woken him up without orders. "Aria, report," Morrison said, his voice rough from the long sleep. "Good morning, Captain." The ship's artificial intelligence responded in her calm female voice. "Current date is August 15th, year 2847 by Earth calendar. You have been in cryogenic sleep for 847 years, 2 months, and 16 days. Morrison's head cleared quickly. 800 years. Their mission to explore the Outer Rim was supposed to last only 50 years. Something had gone very wrong. "Why did you wake me, Aria? What's our status?" "The ship has been buried under 2 kilometers of sediment and rock. Unknown alien life forms have breached the hull and are currently exploring Deck 7. I initiated revival protocol as per first contact procedures." Morrison jumped out of the pod and grabbed his uniform from the storage compartment. Aliens. In all of humanity's expansion into space, they had never found intelligent life. Now, while he slept, first contact was happening on his ship. How many aliens are aboard? 7 individuals. They appear to be archaeologists based on their equipment and behavior. They are not armed with weapons, but I am monitoring their movements carefully. Morrison walked to the command center adjacent to the revival bay. The main screen showed the alien team moving through the ship's corridors. They were shorter than humans, with blue scaled skin and multiple eyes. They moved carefully, clearly amazed by what they were seeing. "Have you been monitoring galactic communications?" Morrison asked. "Yes, Captain. I have been passively scanning radio frequencies for the past 6 months since the aliens began their excavation. The information I have gathered is troubling." Morrison sat down in his command chair. "Show me." The screen filled with data streams, news broadcasts, and official communications in dozens of alien languages. Aria's translation software had been working overtime to decode everything. "Captain, according to these transmissions, humanity is listed as extinct by something called a Galactic Coalition. Earth is marked as a dead world, destroyed by a stellar event approximately 600 years ago." Morrison felt like he had been punched in the stomach. Earth was gone. Humanity was extinct. He and his crew of 12,000 might be the only humans left alive in the universe. How is that possible? What happened to our colony ships? The other exploration fleets? I have found no references to any surviving human settlements or ships. All records indicate that humanity died with Earth. We appear to have been forgotten by history. Morrison stared at the aliens on the screen. They were examining human writing on the walls, taking pictures of everything they found. To them, his ship was probably just an ancient relic from a dead civilization. "Captain, there is more," Aria continued. "I have been analyzing the current military capabilities of the major galactic powers. Their technology is significantly behind ours, even compared to our 800-year-old systems." Morrison pulled up the tactical analysis. Aria was right. The alien ships he could see in the intercepted communications looked primitive compared to the Leviathan. Their weapons were basic energy beams and simple missiles. Their armor was thin and weak. How many ships are in the local area? Currently, none. However, I am detecting increased communications traffic. Word of our discovery is spreading quickly. I estimate we have perhaps 12 hours before military vessels arrive to investigate. Morrison had to make a decision. He could order the ship to surface and leave immediately. The Leviathan was powerful enough to fight its way out if necessary. But where would they go? If humanity was truly extinct, his crew had nowhere to run. The other option was to make contact. These aliens had found them, but they seemed to be scientists, not soldiers. Maybe there was a chance of peaceful first contact. Aria, begin revival procedures for the senior staff. Wake up Commander Park from Diplomatic Corps, Lieutenant Wright from Tactical, and Chief Clark from Engineering. We're going to need them. Yes, Captain. Should I activate defensive systems? Morrison watched the aliens on the screen. They were being careful with his ship, treating it with respect. They weren't trying to damage anything or steal technology. They seemed genuinely curious about human culture. Not yet, but keep weapons on standby. If this goes wrong, we need to be ready to protect ourselves. As Aria began waking up his senior officers, Morrison continued watching the alien team. In a few hours, he would have to decide whether to trust these strangers with the lives of the last humans in the galaxy. The weight of his entire species' survival rested on his shoulders. The aliens had no idea that they had just woken up humanity's most advanced warship, crewed by soldiers who had nothing left to lose. Dr. Veloc was taking pictures of human writing on the walls when the ship began to shake. At first, he thought it was just the unstable ground above them. But then the shaking became stronger, and emergency lights started flashing red throughout the corridor. "Everyone out!" Veloc shouted to his team. "Something's wrong." The Zephyrian scientists ran toward the airlock they had cut open hours earlier. Behind them, they could hear the deep rumble of massive machinery coming to life. The ship's engines were starting up after centuries of silence. Outside, on the planet's surface, the excavation site was in chaos. The ground cracked and split as something enormous pushed up from below. Tons of dirt and rock fell away as a leviathan rose from its ancient grave. The ship's hull gleamed in the sunlight, revealing its true size for the first time. Crix was the first to reach the surface. He looked back and screamed. The ship was huge beyond imagination. It was like a metal mountain rising from the earth. The hull stretched as far as it could see in both directions. Weapon turrets emerged from hidden panels along the sides, their dark barrels turning to scan for threats. "By the stars!" Veloc whispered as he climbed out of the excavation pit. "What have we awakened?" The Leviathan continued to rise, its anti-gravity systems lifting it smoothly into the air. Dirt and rocks fell from its hull like rain. The ship was so large that it blocked out the sun, casting a shadow over the entire dig site. Inside the ship, Captain Morrison watched the exterior cameras as his vessel broke free from the ground. His senior staff had been revived and were now at their stations on the bridge. Commander Lisa Park stood at the communications console. Lieutenant Kelly Wright managed the tactical systems, and Chief Ryan Clark monitored the engines. "All systems operational." "Captain," Clark reported, "we have full power and all weapons are online." "The aliens off the ship," Wright added. "They are on the surface, approximately 200 meters from our position." Morrison could see the alien scientists on his screen. They looked terrified as they stared up at his massive ship. He didn't blame them. The Leviathan was designed to be intimidating. It was humanity's most powerful warship, built to defend Earth from any threat. "Captain, I'm detecting multiple communication signals," Park said. "The aliens are broadcasting on several frequencies. It looks like they are calling for help." Morrison nodded. Word of their awakening would spread quickly. Soon, the entire galaxy would know that humans still existed. The question was whether they would see the Leviathan as a threat or an opportunity. "Aria, begin standard first contact protocols," Morrison ordered. "Broadcast on all frequencies. Let them know we're not hostile unless provoked." The ship's powerful transmitters sent out messages in every known language. The translation was simple. "This is a United Nations ship Leviathan. We are not hostile. Do not approach with weapons. We will defend ourselves if attacked." On the surface, Dr. Veloc's team received the transmission through their equipment. The message was clear, but it raised more questions than answers. The ship claimed to be from the United Nations, but that government had been destroyed with Earth centuries ago. "Professor," Crick said, his voice shaking, "look at the size of those weapons. Each gun is bigger than our entire research ship." Veloc was thinking the same thing. The human ship's main guns were enormous. The point defense turrets alone could destroy any vessel in the current galactic fleet. If this ship was built centuries ago, how advanced were the humans at their peak? More worrying was the fact that the ship was still operational. The hull showed no signs of damage or decay. The engines ran smoothly and quietly. The weapon systems moved with perfect precision. Human technology was far beyond anything the galaxy had seen. "We need to contact the Coalition immediately," Veloc said. "They need to know about this." As the Zephyrian team prepared their emergency broadcast, the Leviathan hung in the air above them like a metal god. Its sensors swept the surrounding space, mapping every asteroid and recording every radio signal. The ship's computers analyzed thousands of transmissions, learning about the current state of galactic politics and military capabilities. Morrison stood on his bridge and looked out at the alien world below. His ship could destroy the entire planet if he wanted to. The aliens had no defenses that could stop him, but that wasn't why he was here. "Captain, I'm detecting incoming ships," Wright reported. "Multiple contacts, still several hours away but approaching fast." "How many?" "At least 20 vessels, possibly more. They are coming from different directions." Morrison smiled grimly. The galaxy was responding to his presence exactly as he expected. They were afraid. They had every right to be. The sleeping giant of humanity had awakened, and the universe would never be the same. Admiral Korvac of the Centauri Defense Force stood in his command center, staring at the images being transmitted from the Kepler system. The human ship filled his entire screen, and he could barely believe what he was seeing. The vessel was larger than his entire fleet combined. "How is this possible?" Korvac asked his intelligence officer. "The humans have been extinct for 600 years. "Sir, we're reviewing all our historical files on human military capabilities," the officer replied. "Most of our information comes from old war records, but we always assumed they were exaggerated propaganda." Korvac had fought in 3 major galactic wars. He had seen the most advanced ships the galaxy could build. Nothing came close to what the humans had constructed centuries ago. The ship's hull alone looked thick enough to withstand any weapon in the current galactic arsenal. On the other side of the galaxy, Empress Zara of the Andromedan Empire was holding an emergency meeting with her military council. The holographic display showed the human ship from every angle, and the measurements were terrifying. "Your Majesty," General Vex said, "our analysts believe this vessel could destroy our entire home fleet single-handedly. Its main guns are larger than our battleships." Empress Zara had ruled for 40 years and had never shown fear. But now, looking at the human warship, she felt afraid for the first time. How many ships like this did the humans build? "We don't know, Your Majesty. Our records are incomplete. But if they could construct something this advanced 800 years ago, we can't imagine what they might have built since then." The fear was spreading across the galaxy faster than the news broadcasts. Every major civilization was having the same conversation. If the humans had survived and continued to develop their technology in secret, they could conquer the entire galaxy without breaking a sweat. On the trading world of Nexus Prime, panic buying had started. Merchants were selling emergency supplies as fast as they could stock them. Citizens were booking passage on ships heading to the Outer Rim as far from known space as possible. The Galactic Coalition called an emergency session on their capital world. Representatives from 50 different species gathered in the Great Hall, all talking at once. The fear in the room was thick enough to cut with a knife. President Fowl of the Coalition stood at the central podium. "Order! We must have order!" he shouted. "This panic serves no one." "Easy for you to say," called out Ambassador X from Draconian Systems. "Your species didn't fight the humans in the border wars. We know what they're capable of." "That was 800 years ago," Thal replied. "The humans are extinct. This must be some kind of automated system." "Automated systems don't send diplomatic messages," Rex shot back. "That ship is crewed, and if there's one, there might be more." The debate raged for hours. Some species wanted to attack the human ship immediately before it could call for reinforcements. Others argued for diplomatic contact. A few suggested evacuating the entire sector until they could understand the threat. Meanwhile, military fleets across the galaxy were mobilizing. Admiral Korvac had already dispatched his fastest ships to the Kepler system. The Andromedan Empire was moving their border fleets into defensive positions. Even the peaceful Zephyrians were arming their research vessels. Dr. Veloc watched the approaching fleets from his temporary shelter on the planet's surface. His archaeological team had become the most important witnesses in galactic history. The communications arrays they had set up were broadcasting everything to the Coalition headquarters. "Professor," Crick said, monitoring the radio channels, "there are over 40 ships heading this way. Some of them are armed with planet-killing weapons." Veloc felt sick. His discovery was about to start a war. The human ship hung silently in the sky above them, its weapons trained on the horizon where the first alien fleets would appear. On distant worlds, families hugged their children tighter. Ancient stories about human warfare were being retold in frightened whispers. The humans were known for their creativity in battle, their refusal to surrender, and their terrifying ability to turn any situation into a weapon. Religious leaders across the galaxy declared days of prayer. Some called the human ship a sign of coming judgment. Others believe it was a test from the cosmos itself. The stock markets crashed as investors pulled their money from anything related to military technology. If human weapons were this advanced centuries ago, current galactic military equipment was worthless. In the deepest archives of the Coalition, historians worked frantically to find any information about human ship construction. What they found made them even more afraid. The humans had built their ships to last forever. They were designed to operate for thousands of years without maintenance. If the Leviathan had been sleeping for 8 centuries and was still fully operational, there might be hundreds of similar ships scattered across the galaxy, waiting to wake up. The universe held its breath as the fleets converged on the Kepler system, preparing for first contact with a species that was supposed to be dead but had just proven they were very much alive. Captain Morrison stood in his ready room, looking at the tactical display that showed 4 to 7 alien warships approaching his position. His senior staff sat around the table, their faces grim as they studied the enemy fleet compositions. "They'll be in weapons range in 6 hours," Lieutenant Wright reported. "The lead ships are Centauri heavy cruisers, fast and well-armed, but their shields won't stop our main guns." "Captain, we could easily destroy the entire fleet," Chief Clark added. "Our weapons are centuries ahead of theirs. It wouldn't even be a fair fight." Morrison nodded. The Leviathan could win this battle without breaking a sweat. But winning would make humanity's situation worse, not better. If he destroyed this fleet, the aliens would send 10 more, then 100. Eventually, even the Leviathan will be overwhelmed. "There has to be another way," Commander Park said. "We can't fight the entire galaxy. Even if we win every battle, we'll lose the war." Morrison had been thinking the same thing. His crew of 12,000 was probably the last of humanity. They were alone in a galaxy that feared them and wanted them dead. Fighting would only prove the aliens were right to be afraid. "Aria, show me everything you've learned about the current galactic situation," Morrison ordered. The holographic display filled with data. Political maps, trade routes, military capabilities, and diplomatic relationships between dozens of species. Aria had been busy during the past few hours, analyzing every piece of information she could find. "The Galactic Coalition is a dominant power," Aria explained. 53 member species, mostly peaceful but with significant military forces. They've been at peace for over a century, which is why their technology has stagnated. Morrison studied the information carefully. These aliens weren't evil conquerors. They were ordinary people who had built a stable civilization. They were afraid of humans because their history books painted humanity as aggressive warriors. What do our historical records say about pre-war humanity? Morrison asked. Earth was indeed aggressive in its expansion, Aria replied. But humans also showed remarkable adaptability and diplomatic skill when necessary. Many conflicts were resolved through negotiation rather than warfare. Morrison made his decision. "We're going to tell them the truth." "So?" Wright looked confused. "We're going to tell them exactly what happened to humanity. The real story, not the propaganda version in their history books." Morrison walked to the window and looked down at the alien archaeologists still camped on the planet's surface. Dr. Velok's team had been broadcasting everything to the Coalition. They would be the perfect audience for his message. "Begin revival procedures for the Cultural Preservation Team," Morrison ordered. "I want historians, linguists, and anyone who worked on the colony databases. We're going to show the galaxy who we really were." 3 hours later, Morrison stood on the bridge with his expanded crew. The alien fleets were getting closer, but they had slowed down, probably arguing about who should attack first. That gave him the time he needed. "Open a channel on all frequencies," Morrison commanded. "Full broadcast, maximum power. I want every ship in the galaxy to hear this." The communications array activated, sending Morrison's voice across space to millions of listeners. On ships, space stations, and planets throughout the galaxy, aliens stopped what they were doing to listen to the first human voice they had ever heard. "My name is Captain Jake Morrison of the United Nations ship Leviathan," he began. "I am speaking to you from what may be the last human ship in existence." Morrison paused, letting that sink in. On the bridge, his crew watched the tactical display as alien ships stopped their approach to listen. "Your history books tell you that humanity was destroyed 600 years ago when our sun went nova. Those books are correct. Earth is gone. Our colonies, our fleets, our entire civilization was wiped out in a matter of hours. Commander Park activated the cultural database, transmitting images and videos from Earth's final days. The aliens would see the evacuation attempts, the desperate effort to save as many people as possible, and the final moments as their homeworld burned. The Leviathan was on a deep space exploration mission when the disaster occurred. We've been in cryogenic sleep for over 8 centuries, hoping to find new worlds for human settlement. We woke up to discover that we are the last. Morrison's voice grew stronger as he continued. We are not here to conquer or destroy. We are refugees, survivors of a dead civilization. We seek only a place to preserve what remains of human knowledge and culture. The transmission included everything: human art, music, literature, and scientific discoveries. The aliens were seeing humanity not as monsters, but as people who had loved, created, and dreamed just like they did. We know you fear us, Morrison concluded. Your fear is understandable. But we ask for the chance to prove that humanity can be a friend to the galaxy, not its enemy. We are the last of our kind. Help us find a new home, and we will share our knowledge with those who need it. The transmission ended, and the bridge fell silent. Morrison had just gambled the survival of his species on the hope that the galaxy had room for compassion. Now they would wait to see if the aliens would choose fear or mercy. The alien fleet stopped moving toward the Leviathan after Morrison's broadcast. For 3 hours, the ships hung in space while their commanders argued over what to do next. Some believed the human captain's story, but others remained suspicious. Admiral Korvac was the first to break the silence. His message came through on the emergency frequency that all the fleets were monitoring. Human vessel, this is Admiral Korvac of the Centauri Defense Force. Your story is touching, but we need proof. How do we know you're telling the truth about being the last of your kind? Morrison had expected this question. The aliens had every right to be suspicious. If he was lying about humanity being extinct, this could be the advance scout for a massive invasion fleet. Admiral Korvac, what proof would satisfy you? Morrison replied, Show us your ship's capabilities, came the response from Empress Zara's fleet. If you're truly peaceful, you won't mind demonstrating your weapon so we can assess the threat level. Morrison looked at his tactical officer. Lieutenant Wright shook her head. Captain, if we show them our full capabilities, they might decide we're too dangerous to let live. And if we don't show them anything, they'll assume we're hiding something worse, Commander Park added. Morrison made another difficult decision. We'll give them a limited demonstration. Something impressive enough to prove our power, but not so overwhelming that they panic. He turned to Wright. Prepare a squadron of fighters. No weapons, just a flight demonstration. And charge the main railgun for a single shot. Target, so. Morrison pointed to the tactical display. That asteroid field at the edge of the system. Pick a nice big rock. 20 minutes later, the Leviathan's fighter bay doors opened. 12 sleek fighters emerged, each one the size of a small alien ship. The pilots had been awakened specifically for this demonstration, and they were eager to fly after centuries of sleep. The alien fleets watched in amazement as the human fighters performed maneuvers that should have been impossible. They moved faster than anything the aliens had ever seen, turning at angles that would have killed any organic pilot. The fighters danced through space like living things, their movements perfectly coordinated. How are they moving like that? Admiral Korvac asked his sensor operator. Sir, I'm not detecting any life signs in those craft. I think they're unmanned. Impossible. No computer can fly like that. But the sensor operator was wrong. The fighters did have pilots, but the humans had developed inertial dampening technology that allowed them to survive impossible accelerations. To the aliens, it looked like magic. The fighters returned to the Leviathan and disappeared into the massive ship's hangar bays. Then Morrison gave the order for the main demonstration. Fire when ready, Lieutenant Wright. The Leviathan's main railgun charged with a deep humming sound that the alien ships could detect on their sensors. The weapon was designed to punch through enemy battleships, but today it would target a simple asteroid. The gun fired with a flash of light that lit up the entire system. A tungsten slug the size of a telephone pole shot out at a significant fraction of the speed of light. It crossed the distance to the asteroid belt in seconds. The target asteroid was over a kilometer wide, a mountain of rock and metal that had been floating in space for millions of years. The human projectile hit it dead center, and the entire asteroid simply vanished. One moment it was there, the next it was an expanding cloud of dust and debris. The alien fleets fell silent. Even their most powerful weapons couldn't have destroyed the asteroid so completely. The human ship had turned a mountain into powder with a single shot. "Dear stars," whispered Dr. Velok from the planet's surface. "What kind of technology is that?" On Admiral Korvac's ship, the crew stared at their sensors in disbelief. "Say, the energy readings from that weapon are off our scales. They just fired the equivalent of a small nuclear bomb. And they have multiple guns that size," the sensor operator added. "I count at least 8 main batteries." The demonstration had the effect Morrison intended, but it also created a new problem. Several of the smaller alien fleets immediately turned around and jumped to hyperspace, fleeing the system as fast as their engines could carry them. The remaining ships began broadcasting on all frequencies. Some were calling for immediate retreat. Others demanded that the human ship be destroyed before it could call for reinforcements. "Captain," Wright reported, "we're receiving multiple transmissions. Half of them are asking us to surrender our weapons. The other half are begging us not to hurt them." Morrison realized his mistake. The demonstration had been too effective. Instead of proving that humans could be trusted, he had proven that they were too powerful to be trusted. "So, the Andromedan fleet is powering up their weapons," Wright warned. "They're moving into attack formation." Morrison faces worse fear. The demonstration had backfired. Instead of calming the aliens' fears, he had convinced them that the only safe human was a dead human. The galaxy was about to force humanity into the very war Morrison had tried to avoid. The Andromedan fleet moved into attack formation, their weapons charging for what would be the first shot fired in a new galactic war. Captain Morrison watched the tactical display and knew he had seconds to act before everything went wrong. "All stop," Morrison ordered. "Power down weapons and raise our hands." "So?" Lieutenant Wright looked confused. "Do it. Send a signal to all fleets. We're surrendering." The bridge crew stared at their captain in shock. The Leviathan could destroy every ship in the system, but Morrison was choosing to surrender instead. "Captain Morrison to all vessels," he broadcast. "We are powering down our weapons. We do not wish to fight. Please hold your fire while we explain our true purpose here." Admiral Korvac was the first to respond. "Human vessel, you just demonstrated the ability to destroy planets. Why should we trust your surrender?" Morrison took a deep breath. This was his last chance to save both humanity and prevent a war that would devastate the galaxy. "Because, Admiral, you haven't seen our ship's real purpose yet. Aria, activate the colony bay displays." The Leviathan's hull suddenly lit up with thousands of new lights. Massive sections of the ship that had appeared to be armor plating slid open, revealing chambers filled with gleaming equipment. The alien sensors went wild as they detected the contents. "Genetic reconstruction laboratories," Morrison explained. "Terraforming equipment. Agricultural systems. Medical facilities advanced enough to cure diseases your species haven't even discovered yet. The Leviathan isn't just a warship. It's a seed ship designed to preserve and rebuild civilization." Dr. Velok watched from planet's surface as more and more sections of the huge ship opened up. "By the stars," he whispered. "It's like a flying city." Morrison continued his explanation. "Our mission was to find suitable worlds for human colonization. We carry the genetic material of every species from Earth, along with our entire cultural database and technological knowledge. We were meant to be humanity's backup plan." He paused, letting the implications sink in. "The weapons you've seen are not for conquest. They are for protection. When you're carrying the future of an entire species, you need to be able to defend it." On Empress Zara's flagship, her science advisor was analyzing the sensor readings. "Your Majesty, the medical technology I'm seeing could extend our lifespans by centuries. The terraforming equipment could turn dead worlds into paradise. And the weapons," Zara asked, "could protect us from threats we've never imagined. Your Majesty, humanity isn't offering to conquer us. They are offering to guard us." Morrison sensed a change in mood across the alien fleets. Fear was slowly being replaced by curiosity and hope. "We propose an exchange," Morrison said. "Grant us territory to establish a new human colony. Help us rebuild our population from our genetic archives. In return, the Leviathan will serve as guardian for this sector of space." "Guardian against what?" Admiral Korvac asked. Morrison's expression grew serious. "Aria, show them the deep space scans." The display showed images from the edge of known space. Dark shapes moving between the stars, heading slowly toward the galactic core. The objects were massive, clearly artificial, and definitely not from any known civilization. "We detected these during our centuries of sleep," Morrison explained. "Something is coming from beyond the galaxy. Something that makes our ship look small. They'll arrive in approximately 50 years. The alien fleets fell silent as they studied the images. The unknown objects dwarfed even the Leviathan. If they were hostile, the current galactic civilizations wouldn't stand a chance. "You're proposing to defend us from these invaders?" President Thal of the Coalition asked. "We're proposing to help you defend yourselves," Morrison corrected. "We'll share our technology, help you build better ships, train your forces. When the invaders arrive, we'll face them together." The negotiations took 6 hours. Species representatives argued, debated, and demanded guarantees. In the end, it was Dr. Veloc who provided the deciding argument. They could have destroyed us all and taken what they wanted, the archaeologists broadcast of fleets. Instead, they're asking for our help and offering their protection. What does that tell you about their character? The vote was close, but the coalition agreed. Humanity would be granted a system at the edge of their territory. The Leviathan would establish a colony and slowly rebuild the human population. In exchange, they would serve as the galaxy's defenders against external threats. As the alien fleet began to disperse, Morrison stood on his bridge and looked out at the stars. His crew was already working with coalition scientists, sharing medical technology that would save millions of lives. "Captain," Commander Park said, "the first group of colonists will be ready for revival next week. We'll have a permanent settlement within the year." Morrison smiled. Humanity had been extinct, but now they were reborn as something greater. They were no longer conquerors or refugees. They were guardians, protectors of a galaxy that had learned to trust them. The irony wasn't lost on him. A species once feared for their aggression had become the galaxy's greatest hope for peace. The Leviathan had risen from its grave not as a weapon of war, but as a shield against the darkness that lay beyond the stars.